and welcome back to Don't Take the Box. Today we have for you June's Artful box. It arrived a few weeks ago. Actually, it's not late. It's just that a few other boxes had priority in filming. So let's get to it. As always, I'm giving you the first view. And again, as always, we see a lot of orange, which I don't like. But since the contents are usually great, I'm not going to comment any further on the color. Or at least not on the offending color, because we also get some pink. And since I really love pink, I'm going to unwrap this first. What we get is a bottle of Daler Rowney Aquafine masking fluid. Regular visitors of the YouTube channel will probably remember that we recently got some Daler Rowney Aquafine Aquarelle tubes. So if it doesn't work out with the content of this box, it will probably work out with the other paints. We'll see about that. Boop. Then we have an Artful box, and I think I can guess what's going to be inside. Some brushes. Ooh, more than just some brushes. A lot of brushes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In various shapes and sizes. We get a flat one, a dagger brush, and then 3 round brushes. So we get a flat one in 14, a dagger one in size 6, and round ones in size 5, 4, and 1 for details. Then we get a pencil in F hardness, which is somewhere between HB and H, and my favorite hardness, not to draw a sketch but to write with, but it will probably work out fine just for sketching as well. And then we also get a pipette, which is actually very, very handy for watercolors and ink work. So I think that by now, just as me, you have guessed that we are going to get some watercolors, or at least some paints. Which presumably are in the tin box here, but first I'm going to pull out the rest of the stuff. We get some note cards. I think I got them in the previous box as well, so I'm guessing they sent this with every box. And I really like that because I like drawing my own cards and then just being able to send them out. But then that's me because I like writing stuff. I mean, letters and whatnot. And then, not lastly, but very importantly, the Artful magazine with a lot of lessons on what to do and how to use the material that we got. I really enjoyed the last magazine. I'm going to give you a quick show through perhaps. You can see that it's fully colored with a lot of detailed work and interviews and tips and tricks and lots of styles. It's actually quite interesting. If not, I wouldn't recommend this box just for the magazine, but I must say, compared to other magazines that you get in subscription boxes, this one is really, really, really good. And then we also get some paper to work with. And this month, this is premium heavyweight watercolor paper, 300 GSM, acid-free, textured. Let's feel. It's very lightly textured. I would say this is probably a hot press and not the fancy cold press. But the weight in itself should be good enough to handle the supplies that we get. And then lastly, but presumably the main thing, we get a tin box with a ring, so you can just very handily put your thumb in it to keep your box well balanced if you're on the go, so as not to lose it or getting unstable. And what do we have inside? Whoops. In the cover, a big mixing well, and then a lid with smaller wells or pallets. And then I think 24, because that would be a normal amount, but I'm going to count them. Yes, so 24 lovely, lovely paints. I'm just going to give you all the colors, but I will do the unwrapping off camera because that's going to become very boring very fast. The colors are Prussian blue, Payne's grey, Hooker's green, emerald green, olive green, tree green, yellow ochre, umber, burnt sienna, brown, cool black, titanium white, sea blue, cobalt blue, turquoise, violet, magenta, rose red, cadmium red, plain red, orange, cadmium yellow, yellow, and lemon yellow. A lot of yellows, which you don't always get, so I'm quite happy. Also a lot of greens, which you also don't always get. So for now I'm moderately happy. Of course I will have to see the colors in actual use before I can get really excited. But for now, I'm content. Let's get swatching. We have only one thing that is not painted, so let's test this out first. The pencil. As expected from an F pencil, it's quite hard, but the line is not too soft and quite crisp. Actually, exactly what you'd like and want from an F pencil. I did a little coloring in, but since an F pencil is not meant for shading but just for light sketching in general, this is probably not really the test that you need. Anyway, let's get to the paints, the real thing, the real deal. I'm wetting the brush, and then the first color is white. Again, I'm using cream colored paper for the swatch book because I always want to see how well the white shows up. The difficulty with this thing is, like, I can see the paint quite clearly. It's titanium white, so even although this is aquarelle, this should be a little opaque, but I never know how well the white shows up on camera. I can see it quite clearly, so I'm quite happy. And as far as I can tell, the paints are really soft and buttery, or at least the white is. Next, we have its complete opposite, namely black. And here too, we really want an opaque color, which we seem to be getting. Lovely. We're moving into the browns. This is a sepia color, or it looks like a sepia color. And as you can see, this is starting to be a little more transparent, which is actually what you expect from watercolors. It's very rare to have watercolors that are completely opaque. If you want that, you don't need watercolors, but you need gouache. Further on, this should be the burnt umber, if I remember correctly, which is a softer, redder tone. But again, very, very, very soft and buttery to work with. Moving on to the sienna. In a red tone. I did say red tone for the umber as well, I think, and I meant to say yellow tone. Next we have yellow ochre, one of my favorite colors. Oof, I really love that. I'm going to get an extra squish out of it. I really like how golden yellow ochre usually is. Although I wonder why they always put it in with the browns or the earth tones and not with the actual yellows. I mean, it is a sort of an earth tone, but I would have liked to get my yellow ochre in between my other yellows. Moving into green, we have the 3 green, which looks quite dark in the half pan, but is actually a very lovely sort of spring green. I can tell I'm going to love this color a lot. Next we have the olive green. Dark and earthy, just the way my husband likes it. So to please him, I'm going to get in an extra squishy. Then we have Viridian. It always reminds me a little of pine green, but not exactly, but it's the sort of green that I would probably mix with a brown or a blue to get a lovely fur color. Fur as in F-I-R, as in like a pine tree, and not fur as in animal skin. And on the last green, which I believe was Hooker's green. It has absolutely nothing to do with prostitutes, but is named after the artist called Hooker, who presumably used this color a lot, or maybe even synthesized this first, or first used pigment to create this green. I don't know the exact history. Again, a green that I really, really like and is quite soft and versatile. Almost at the end of the first row, we move into blue, and I believe this was the Prussian blue. And as expected, it is a very, very dark shade of blue. No, not the Prussian. This should be the Payne's Grey, which is a very dark grey with a blue undertone. I'm going to see if I can see the difference with the Prussian blue, which should be at the very end. And as you can see, this is also very dark, but a lot more blue. Can't believe I didn't see it immediately. We move into cobalt blue after this. Which is a little paler than I would expect from a cobalt blue. Next we have a sky blue, which really is, for me, the color of a summer's day. Although I'm starting to think that maybe they switch the wraps or the paints, because this could easily have been in cobalt blue. Maybe I'm wrong. And then the last of the blues, it should be very soft turquoise. Ah, don't you just love that? Moving into the purples, we first get a very, very dark violet. Ooh. Very strongly pigmented as well. Whew. That's what happens when your cat has an opinion. Next we have the magenta. I must say, in general, it is not a color that I would select, but I understand its use and its value, especially in a slightly bigger set, because magenta really is a very nice mixing color. Even though it has a soft, cool tone in itself, it usually adds a little warmth to your purples and your browns. Emil is not getting the hint. Cat. We move on into rose red, which is already starting to look like my favorite red. Next we have the cadmium red, or just I seem to have missed one. So this is not the rose red, but the cadmium red, because the red that I'm using now is the plain red, which is a sort of vermilion. As you can see, it has a slightly orange texture to it. And then the one I'm using now is the rose red, which could just as easily have been called pink or fuchsia, and is absolutely not my favorite red in this box. So far, this is the only disappointment, that we don't get a really lovely light pink. Anyway, nearly done. We move on to the orange. More and more I'm impressed with how soft and buttery these paints are. I prepped them just the tiniest bit. I just removed the wrapping and then added 1 drop of clear water to all of the pans, and you can really see that the paints that had some time to absorb the water are very, very smooth and nice to work with. Now we go into cadmium yellow, which is, I should say, standard yellow, but it is relatively dark for a yellow, because yellow obviously is never quite dark. Next we have the plain yellow, which is supposedly the standard yellow. As you can see, especially in the blob, the value of the color is almost the same as the cadmium yellow, but it feels a little cooler. And then lastly, a very cool yellow, namely the lemon yellow, which is very, very bright and pale. but absolutely lovely. Now, while I think of something to sketch, draw and paint for you, I was going to add something, but through the magic of editing, it's already sketching, drawing, painting time, so enjoy! Some final thoughts. Obviously, very, 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 very happy with the colors that we got. And actually quite happy, even a little impressed with the brushes. We had some of these, I think from the same branding or the same style, in the ink box, but I did not use them as extensively then as I did now, and I must say I'm really, really happy. I did not use the masking fluid actually because I thought of it a little too late. I was already halfway drawing when I thought that maybe I should have used the masking fluid, but that will have to wait until another time. And as far as the paper goes, I know it's not the best quality and it definitely does not deliver the texture that is promised, but it holds the water very, very, very well. I had no buckling whatsoever, even though I was quite generous with water at some stages of this painting, and it really didn't show at all. So I'm really, really happy with that. The only thing that I missed a little bit in this box was actually an eraser, because even though that pencil that we got does sketch very lightly as promised and anticipated, you still need some erasing done before you start adding color. And I could not do that, so I had to supply an eraser of my own. That being said, obviously most people have an eraser at home and it wasn't really necessary to include one in this box, but then you could also argue that you also don't need to add a pencil because most people have one laying at home. So that's the only consideration I would make. That being said, these are minor, very minor faults. Everything that is included in this box is definitely worth its money. And I hope to get an equally fantastic and fully packed box next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you have any suggestions. And I'll see you next week. Bye!